Hi, I'm Stewart Spinks and welcome to episode 398 of my podcast, Beekeeping Short and Sweet. Well, there's been a lot of beekeeping happening this week, as you would expect. The weather has cooled, but just a little, and I've been asked some questions about my preferred method of queen rearing and also advice on moving some bees. Beekeeping Short and Sweet, a beekeeping podcast for the inquisitive beekeeper with a short attention span. A beekeeper, in fact, just like me. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Before we get started, a quick question for you. Maybe some of you can pick up on this. Does this recording sound a little bit like I'm in an echo chamber? For some reason, I seem to have picked up a bit of an echo, and I'm not really too sure. It may be my hearing, but if you could maybe have a listen with that in mind and just drop me a message, I'd really appreciate it. I think it might be the new office, bare walls, hard floor, but we'll try and resolve that issue. Anyway, into today's podcast. We are into full gas beekeeping right now. All hands to the pumps, as it were, and a lot of headless chicken kind of dashing around, trying to keep all of the plates spinning. I think that's a bit of a confused, mixed metaphor. But anyway, it is the end of May, and what a very busy month I've had. I hope your beekeeping in the month of May has been busy, but not too stressful. I think we're past that reproductive phase now. Certainly for me, it feels like we're past the main swarming part of the year. Fingers crossed, eh? Thinking back though, we've had some very chilly days. I remember my disappointment at my allotment potatoes being caught by that frost. And then the heatwave bank holiday weekend. What a contrast that was. It feels like we're heading into some unsettled weather next week. A few showers, maybe a bit thundery, but the temperatures generally should hold up quite nicely without getting too extreme. So I've spent quite a number of days this month travelling to Thorn beehives in Ragby. That's in Lincolnshire, for those of you who don't know. From my home, it's kind of northwest and then north a little bit, I think. Anyway, it's about a 2.5 hour drive each way. So quite a distance for those of us that don't get out much. I hosted several beekeeping days, beginner sessions, a next steps day, and finally, just this last week, a queen rearing day. If anyone that came along to any of those days is listening, it was lovely to meet you, and I wish you well with your respective beekeeping journeys. Along with that, I also delivered a number of nukes for sale, and I have to say that's been quite a stressful time. Making sure that all of the nukes have a marked queen, that she definitely goes into the travel box, and that there are the regulation number of frames of brood or more in some instances, and food enough to see them through their onward journey into their new home and maybe for a week or so. It all sounds fairly straightforward, but when you have very large nukes that are desperate to go into a full-size hive, a travel box where they're going to get closed up for a period of time, and fluctuating temperatures ranging from very chilly to heatwave conditions, it can be tricky getting the balance right. So the end user beekeeper gets a nice box of bees, as it were. And obviously I want to supply that. I don't want to give anyone bees that are not up to standard. It's been really busy but enjoyable, and obviously sometimes a bit of a stressful time of the year. For the rest of this past week, I've been assessing what boxes can come off that are filled with honey. Honestly, we have some supers that feel heavier than the brood boxes that we put on some colonies. So well have the bees foraged and stored the honey. This is a result of using just 9 frames in the supers rather than 10 or even 11. For those of you just getting started and with minimal equipment, it makes sense to start with as many frames in the super as you can get in there. Let me explain. With frames tightly packed together, foundation is drawn out in a much more controlled and flatter way. Mostly. There are always colonies that will head off piste, as it were, drawing out comb at 90-degree angles to the beekeeper's preferred direction of travel, and that's majorly frustrating when you haven't yet got a single frame of nicely drawn comb in your supers. Eventually, mainly through trial and error and patience, lots of patience, you will have the loveliest, pristine, drawn super frames filled with a fabulous crop of honey, all beautifully capped with almost white cappings. It looks so good, you'll be a little reluctant to uncap it and extract, but extract it you will, I've no doubt. Once you have those empty super frames fully extracted, treat them as precious objects and get them back on the hive for the summer nectar flow. This time you can leave one frame out maybe and reduce the number to 10 frames, or be bold and reduce the number of frames to 9. Why do this? Well, each time you reduce the number of frames in your supers, it's one less frame to extract. Simple, really. It's one less frame the bees have to devote wax resources to in rebuilding and capping honey reserves, and you get a larger honey to wax ratio, so there's more room for extra honey, and those supers will feel very heavy. You might want somebody to help you lift them. It's looking like we will have around 30 colonies with a spring honey crop to come off. Some of these have those brood boxes on that I've talked about before. Now, those do weigh a lot. It's not that there's less space for honey, just that the curve in the foundation when they were drawn has meant a thick chunk of honey on one side of the frame and a very thin slither of honey on the other side. It's not wasted space anywhere, just very lopsided. These will definitely go into the appy melter, unfortunately, but the majority of the supers have frames perfect for extraction, and I'll shoot a video once we get to the honey room, get it set up and ready for that extraction process. The major topic of the day is queen rearing, and some questions that I've been sent, but also some questions that arose in my mind during the queen rearing session that I hosted last week at Thorns. The first question is actually about when queen rearing should stop during the season. How late can queens be raised? Well, let's kick off by saying that colonies produce supersedure cells very late into the autumn, so you could argue that if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for the beekeeper. Personally, I think it unwise to raise queens late in the year. Beekeeping being what it is, I'm sure there are beekeepers out there who regularly and successfully raise queens into the autumn months, but I just feel as we head towards the end of the season, the issue of fertile and sexually matured drones becomes an ever greater concern, certainly for me. I have raised late queens. They seem well mated. I treat the colony, I feed the colony, only to be disappointed when the colony finally succumbs as a drone-laying queen in late winter or early spring the following year. Personally, I'll look to finish queen rearing around the end of July and begin the process of settling everything down for the autumn and winter to come. That gives me around 8 weeks from now to get stuck in. Better get my skates on. Next question is, what's my favourite method of queen rearing? We're not talking spring splits and the like here, this is purely queen rearing, so I would have to go with the Nico method and the cloakboard finisher colony setup. If you're not familiar with these two methods, take a look at my videos or check out my podcasts in the past that describe the equipment. Once the Nico cell block has been settled into the hive of choice, I guess I would call this conditioning. I know a lot of beekeepers have issues with getting the queen to lay eggs into the individual cell cups within that cell block, but once it's conditioned, and by that I mean taken out of its packaging, allowed to air and to get some of those nasty plastic type of smells off it, washed, dried and placed in a hive for the bees to walk over and kind of mark it as their own, I think that it's readily accepted by the queen for egg laying. You could spray a little bit of sugar syrup over it to get the workers cleaning it out, for instance. You might find that it takes a couple of seasons though before it's accepted. Just persevere and don't give up on it too soon. The cloakboard hive setup really does deliver fantastic results. The biggest drawback, as I see it, is the fact that you have some very heavy boxes to have to lift when you're carrying out the various manipulations, and especially so if the bees are on a major nectar flow and you have supers on top. That said, I find the queen cells produced using the cloakboard method are probably only second to the natural swarm cells that the colonies will produce themselves. The next question was about the nukes that I use for mating nukes. I use 3-frame full-size nukes, and the question is, how do I set them up and how long do I wait until I add a queen cell? Well, I've had a debate about the use of mini mating nukes with several beekeepers over the years. It's not that there are any problems with the mating nukes, the issues are with me, the beekeeper. I just don't find the time to keep checking in on them, and as a result, the queens sometimes get impatient to go into a bigger box and disappear over the hedge line with a cupful of bees, bless them. My preference, just to repeat myself, is the 3-frame Langstroth nuke. Here I have the luxury of time and space. Time to allow the queen to emerge and head off to mate, and with a little luck, successful mating then requires plenty of space for the queen to settle down and start laying eggs. All of that can happen without me constantly dipping in to check up on them. And actually, I can leave them alone for quite a number of weeks to start producing a brood pattern that I can also check. Less disturbance for them and less work for me. Now that's a bonus. Setting them up is pretty straightforward. I like them to be hopelessly queenless before introducing a queen cell or virgin queen, so I'll open up a nuke and find the queen. She remains in the 6-frame nuke box, and another 6-frame nuke box is split into 2 using a metal divider centrally. This then becomes a 3-frame nuke times 2. 3 frames from the queen-right colony are placed into this nuke with all of the bees that are covering the frame. Then I'll do this with another queen-right colony. So now I have 2 queen-right nukes that I've taken 3 frames out of, leaving 3 frames behind, and I'll add frames of foundation shortly after I've completed the split. We also have, in a single 6-frame nuke box, 2 nukes consisting of 3 frames that are now queenless. The reason I do this is to have 2 completely different sets of pheromone in our 3-frame queenless nukes, not all from the same queen, same hive. It also means the queen-right part of the split nuke gets these 3 new frames fitted with foundation, and they can go about their work happily and draw out those new frames for their original queen. Making them hopelessly queenless can be almost immediate. It just depends on what the frames contain. For instance, if you give them all sealed brood and food, they have no way of producing a queen cell. But if you give them eggs and young larvae, queen cells is exactly what they will produce, so do check carefully. If you can move the mating nukes elsewhere, so much the better, because they won't then lose the flying bees back to the original colony. But if you're unable to do this, maybe shake an extra frame of bees into the nuke first to get a few more nurse bees in there, and try wherever possible to only give them sealed brood, as these don't need anywhere near the level of care and warmth that eggs and very young larvae will require. If I think there are eggs in a queenless nuke, I'll pop back after a week and remove them. So you can see timing is everything with queen rearing. Queen rearing is all about selection of the best queen you can find as the donor, making sure you have enough drones to get a good mating, and timing everything so that you don't miss important dates in that timeline. I'd love to hear how your queen rearing has been this season, so do let me know. Finally, moving bees. Particularly moving bees during the busy spring and summer period, either to a different apiary location or within an apiary. for maybe reasons such as uniting a colony. Please do remember, I'm always talking as if the bees have been checked and are healthy. Don't move colonies that may have a health issue. With that warning in place, moving out of an apiary can be done at any time really, but only if you have other colonies remaining in the target apiary where the colony is being moved from, if your destination apiary is close by. I do think a lot is made of the 3 feet or 3 miles issue. If you move bees 2 miles away and there's forage locally for them, they probably won't go back to the original hive location. But, of course, they might, so do be warned. It all depends on available forage and the direction that they fly to it. They could end up a mile or even less from the original base apiary, and that may well see them fly back to that apiary. If you have hives in both apiaries and you're not particularly worried about losing a few from the parent hive, the bees that do return to the original apiary will more than likely drift into other hives, so they won't be lost. Hence my statement about healthy bees only, please. So within one of our fishing lakes sites, we're going to unite several queenless nukes and colonies to make up just a few hives. This will mean workers will undoubtedly drift, so please do check the health of your bees before you make any kind of move. As I said, I'm heading to the Fishing Lakes apiary this week to do just this, so actually I better pop out and buy a newspaper. Well, that's it for this week.
For all of you who haven't yet signed up to my Patreon page, I, together with Steph, have been creating beekeeping content for many years now. And if you're looking for some straightforward, down-to-earth tips and techniques, help and advice, then do take a look at my Patreon page. We have over 1,700 individual beekeeping posts, videos and podcasts filled with useful and timely help and advice. My approach is pragmatic and calm, sometimes entertaining, but always with help and support for the beekeepers at the heart of what I do. I keep my videos short and concise wherever possible, no waffle, no flannel, just honest beekeeping advice from years of keeping bees. Take a look and join me for the new 2026 beekeeping season. It'll cost you less than a jar of honey, and you never know, there may be something there that will help improve your beekeeping. Check us out online at www.patreon.com/Norfolk Honey.